On this episode, we travel to Sydney, Australia. We learn about a new publication by the Heart Foundation. Does density matter? Then, we talk with the organizers of the Walk 21 Pedestrian Conference. Finally, the Minister for Transport talks about what New South Wales is doing for pedestrians. Stay tuned.
We're in Sydney talking with Michelle Daly with the Heart Foundation. What do you do for the foundation?
Well, my job's really about promoting people to be more active. So it's all about active living, and really the focus for us is on getting people to integrate physical activity into everyday life. And the way I do that is very varied, but it's anything from policy programs, advocacy, or involvement in some of the research programs that we work with some of the universities on as well.
And why is Heart Foundation interested in people being active?
The really obvious link between physical activity and heart health. You know, it's one of the most protective things you can do for your heart is to actually move and achieve even just 30 minutes most days is at least 30 to 50% reduction in heart disease risk. So that is the reason we see physical activity as such an amazing best buy for public health, and particularly for heart disease prevention.
Where does walking fit into that?
The reason we love walking is one of the most accessible, equitable and easy things for people to do. So, most people want to walk. It's the first thing they learn to do, one of the last things they ever want to give up. And from a community accessibility point of view, it's free, it's available, low cost in terms of equipment, and really it's the thing that most people can do. And it's low impact, so it's very safe to walk as well, and I think that makes it very appealing, and it's so easy to integrate walking into everyday life, and that is the secret for us. If you can get it into everyday life, you don't have to find extra time, which we know is the biggest barrier for people to be active. Walking is like tick all the boxes about an easy physical activity.
So what sort of things can you do to promote walking in terms of reaching the public or reaching government, or what has to happen?
It's lots of things having to happen all at once, so we work at a very broad range of levels. So we have an individual community-based walking program. It's one of the most long-standing community-based walking programs in existence, and it's called Heart Foundation Walking. So that's your typical walking groups, go out every week, and a lot of it is around the social connection. So we're offering a community program there, but a lot of our work is then trying to work with levels of government, the local, the state and the national levels, and obviously some very focused advocacy work about creating walkable environments. So a lot of it is around healthy planning and also promoting the active modes of transport. So we work with very non-traditional partners from a health point of view. We're interested also in supporting practitioners. So a lot of our guidance work is actually helping people in planning, transport and other professions in the work that they do around connecting the link between physical activity and transport or planning. And so we really do have that broad range of approaches. It's local, it's state, it's national, it's community, as well as practitioner, and obviously it's around advocating to government for what we know is going to make the environment healthier. And a lot of the work the Heart Foundation obviously does do is traditional funding of research. So we have a very big focus on adding to the evidence base around what does work.
And this morning at the Walk 21 conference, there's an unveiling of a new discussion paper that you sponsored. What was that paper?
So we put out a paper today called Does Density Matter? And it has a look at the role of density, urban density, in terms of creating a walkable neighbourhood. It's one of those issues, particularly in a city underchanging a lot of population growth like Sydney, but in the broader context of Australian cities, there are population pressures, and we think that there's a lot of discussion around the issues of urban sprawl, and we see that there is a trend towards increasing density. And in the community conversation about density, there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of issue around some of the potentially poor outcomes of density when it's not done well, and we would like to inject in that debate, some of the discussion about, well, what if it is done well? one of the benefits of density done well is a more walkable place. And we know that people that live in low density neighbourhoods do less walking than the people that live in higher density neighbourhoods. So there's a win for walking if density is done well, and we just want to inject into the community discussion a bit more understanding around what are the factors that make density done well, because they're the things they've got to be advocating to their local councils and the state government and anyone that has a role in this, the private industries, the developers. We know what can be done to make it done well, but it's not always done that way. So I think the community needs to be armed with the information as well around, what would make densification work better for everybody. So that's why we're starting a bit more of a community discussion around the potential role of density in creating walkable communities. But the important thing to note in the discussion paper is density is one of only a number of things that all have to work together. So, you can't just densify and do nothing else. It's really a puzzle of bringing, 6 or 7 key variables together that creates the conditions for more walking. And that's what we'd like to see happen.
And some of the places that people love best are dense places. Sometimes it almost seems like we've forgotten how to do that. What can we look for to try to make sure that when we do density, we're making a place that people will love and not some place that people will actually dislike?
I think a lot of it is to do with location, so some places are just, not suited to higher density, and I think to make it work, location's critical. So we're looking at, where is the connection to public transport? Where are there existing jobs and services? Where's there a centre of activity that people can connect with? So, I think location's a big one. The other really important thing is amenity, so we want sufficient open and green space. We want access to transport, and we want access to shops and cafes and life. So it has to be well located, it has to be supported by good amenity, and then the other variables that have to come together are broader than just the design of the housing. It's looking at how are the streets designed. Are they actually designed for people to move about on foot? What's the quality of the street like? Is it a place that people can gather? Particularly in denser areas, the open space and the street space becomes a really important place for people because they don't have a lot of their own private space. So it's trying to get all of the variables connecting, places to walk to, transport, jobs, city life, vibrancy. It all has to come together, and it really, and we'd like to also see that people have access to sufficient quality green and open space, which is a really important part of making density work.
How do you see this discussion paper being used? Who should be reading it? Who should be using it to start a discussion?
I think for something, it's not all new information, but it's repackaging that information. It's quite visual, so we've put case studies in there of places that have a number of these features. It's very hard to find one place that ticks every box, to be honest, but we've put case studies in there hoping to illustrate that there are places that are more walkable because they have done certain things in terms of how they've densified. And we would hope that the community members who perhaps don't understand the role of density in that broader walkability would feel a bit more armed with the evidence. So it is based on a lot of evidence, but it's also meant to be accessible to practitioners. There are, lots of references in there that they could go to and actually get some of the evidence that sits behind our argument. But we're trying to also create a discussion between, just the average citizen who may already live in one of these areas or who may be worried about densification in their local area, so that they feel that they actually can engage in debate with policymakers, with decision makers at the local level around the things that they'd like to see in those environments to support them to be more physically active and socially connected and still have a very livable quality of life.
We're in Sydney, Australia, talking with Jim Walker with Walk 21. So what's Walk 21 been up to last year?
So these last 12 months we've been working here in the city of Sydney and really been thinking about what walking means here to the CBD, but also to the wider bigger city. There's 5 million people live in this place, and they're really starting to tackle the central business district, but we wanted to sort of help push that a bit further forwards by making sure that they were thinking about the whole of the city, all the different regions, and we've been doing that piece by piece. supporting the development of a strategy. They've started measuring walking and really thinking about this as a transport mode. And the more they measure, the more they realise it's going on and the things they've got to tackle. And we've been really proud to be part of that.
So what's been going on in the last 3 days here?
So we've just had our annual event. It's been going now for 15 years, and we're delighted to have it been here in such a sunny place with blue skies and bridges and, actually held in a fairground. Can you believe that? But it has been a bit of a good fair and something that has been entertaining for all of us. We've had the city, the state, and we've had people here from 450 different people from about 30 countries, the usual sort of show, but lots of new faces as well. And it's always pleasing that people come from so many different places and still want to hear this walking message.
So anything stand out in this year's program? What were your themes this year?
So we had several things when we started, but what it seemed to boil down to was all about this effect about change. People who wanted to effect change, to be a catalyst for change, and how to implement and lead change. And so we've had 3 great days of speakers, predetermined with, there was a pre-conference workshops, of course, as well, and the usual workshops that we do around this whole city. But one of the things to start with was just a feeling of how do you actually make something happen? And we've heard from so many speakers just say that just low-cost, small things to help reimagine, calm things down and recreate spaces can be very effective. But when they're talking about density, and whether you should do it right out in the suburbs or whether you do it down in downtown, we found that people time and time again said density matters, that proximity counts, and that people are choosing from all ages to actually come and live in the downtown where you do have walkable neighbourhoods, where services and facilities are within reach. And I'm really pleased to have that sort of quantified for the first time by so many academics, and for people to give us examples of where that's working all over Australia and in other places rectified all over the world.
And they're dense places that people love and flock to, and density that just fails. And what's the key to dense places that actually work and they're walkable and that people do love?
Yeah, I think it's about having things within reach. It's that within reach stuff, and I was really pleased when we were in Munich. We learnt about cut-throughs and these sort of shortcuts in the city that people were allowing permeation between the blocks. And I think what we've learnt here is that on this more of a grid type system, we've got these ferries and the public transport really embedded in the way the city works. But 92% of people in the CBD here down in Sydney are walkers. So how do you divide up that space to be more equitable, to make sure that their needs are being accommodated as a priority? And we've heard dozens of examples of things that you can do to make that work. But one of the key things I've taken away from Graham Yarn, who's the chief planner here at the City of Sydney, is his vision for the fact that all services should be within 800 metres. So that means that nearly everything you need on a daily basis is within 800 metres of where you live on foot. And he's also suggesting that it should be a good green corridor, an option for walking into green space and enjoying that sort of tree-lined streets or down into a park should be less than 250 metres. So, that's what defining density with those sorts of numbers is a challenge. Certainly a challenge out of the CBD, but that's basically the numbers that I think we've got to multiply across the whole of the city and in other cities all over the world.
So we're talking about a 10-minute walk and then a 5-minute walk to have things, basically proximity. You have things close by and the street or path infrastructure to get you there. Now, here in Sydney? We talk about the role of the advocate and the professional and the elected official. What's their combination of that here in Sydney that makes things work? Yeah,
we've connected in with the usual advocates and politicians and experts, and we filled the room with these people. It's been great. But the thing that seems to have really resonated with me this time as well is the role of business. And I thought I had this perfect triangle in relationship, and that was how it was all piecing together. But what I've really found is that actually business want to be part of this. They recognise that if shops are failing, if you're citing a new location, their employees want to live in a place where they can actually pop out to lunch, grab a coffee, go for a walk, and enjoy that public space. And so as such, business is now actually coming to us and saying, we want to support this sort of work that you're doing, the sort of work that you're advocating, and business wants to be around the table. So that's fantastic to me, but I'm going to have to change my triangles to squares, I guess, from now on.
Well, now, is that an important development that, the business sector is discovering the importance of walking, and it's not just these environmental advocates or whoever else has been out there, or the quality of life people, but the make the economy run people?
Yeah, I guess this global economic crisis, has really brought it to our attention. It's not that these guys weren't interested in it before, or that we hadn't necessarily had those conversations, but we've been too busy campaigning and working out what we wanted to actually remember what it was, who should we be talking to. When the economy has proved to be really the most visualized currency across the world for all political leaders, we've had to make sure that we understand about walking and the relationship with money. And it's not just about footfall that creates income, but what it is about the right sort of footfall. And so we've started to get a bit of a deeper understanding about how to get people into places, but to create places which are destinations in themselves. And that makes people want to come. And we've had lots of discussions today about whether that should be about children. It's about people who do own cars as well, but it's also about the elderly and making an equitable city. I've been really impressed by the breadth of people who are interested in this, who are demanding these things. And as we start now these conversations with developers about working out how to do that with shopkeepers, retailers, I'm very excited about how we're going to expand this audience in the future. And
other than the discovery of the importance of walking to the business sector, what else has happened in your 15th conference? What else has happened since the first one?
Oh my goodness. John, these questions don't get any easier every year, but I have to keep coming up with something new. But I have to say, it is new. I wouldn't keep doing this if I didn't think that some of the old messages were still just as relevant. We've got people here from transport who want to meet their counterparts in health. We've got the reverse situation as well, of course. But yes, it's partly the same story, but actually every year it's different. And I'm really pleased that every year it seems that not only do we get invited to new places, but people keep coming up with things and saying, can you make sure that you mention this next time? And certainly we've been picking up about IT and the role of these sort of keep fit sort of bands and everything, and people's using people's telephones as a way to understand their behavior and changes in behavior and things. That's all quite an interesting field. I think we're still at the infancy of it. But the other things that we're starting to find is people are wanting to concentrate on the suburbs. They want to not just get the CBDs right. What I'm seeing evolve now is people got their confidence. They found their feet, as it were, in the central districts. Now we've got to go and replicate that into other areas and actually think about what that means for the places where, quite frankly, they're sort of locked by the car. You sort of almost have to use a car because they've been developed in a way that just creates a dominance that has to be unpicked somehow or other now in the future.
And as the Minister for Transport, I'm very pleased to be here today to open the 15th International Conference on Walking and Livable Communities here in Sydney, and I know it's a vision we certainly share. And again, I'm very pleased to be amongst people who have a common vision for the importance of active transport in our community. Walking is a fundamental part of our integrated transport system, and as we know, most public transport journeys start or end with walking, and I'm especially in that category. I get the bus most days to work, walk to my bus stop, and this morning I got the train and walked 25 minutes to my station, and of course that's just naturally part of what we do. And for example, in metropolitan Sydney, our customers make 630,000 trips into the city centre and 1.3 million trips within the city centre. And we know that 92% of these are walking trips, so pedestrian access is so important. We also know that here in Sydney we have a growing population. It's forecast to grow from more than 7 million to more than 9 million by 2031, which is enormous growth. And Greater Sydney's population is forecast to grow by 37%. And we know that more than 100,000 jobs at least will be created in the City of Sydney over the next 20 years. So it's so important that we get our walking active transport strategy right. So I'm very pleased to say that our government here in New South Wales is committed to delivering a better transport system for our customers in an integrated way. And I'm very pleased to say that when we launched our long-term transport plan in 2012, for the first time walking was recognised as a mode of transport. And for many of you that's probably a bit too late, but for us here it was an interesting addition to our transport planning to make sure active transport is regarded as a mode of transport. And again, Sydney is a global city made for walking. Look how beautiful it is. And our goal, put simply as a government, is to work with all relevant agencies to make sure people walk more. And all of you know the benefits of walking more. It's increasing convenience, it's ensuring we have better connections, and it's a safe mode of transport. And of course, the more you walk, the more socially engaged the community becomes. And also, walking contributes significantly to community health and well-being. And that's certainly important. And the current mode share of walking for all trips under 10 kilometres is just over 22%. And of course, we want to see that increase as time goes on. In 2011 and 2012 respectively, about 3 million walking trips of under 2 kilometres were made every day in Greater Sydney. And in the same period, about 3 million short trips were made every day using a car. So we see how important walking is to the overall transport network. And of course, getting more people walking for short trips to the local shops, to school, to their transport hub, no doubt eases congestions on our roads. And of course, we know that for major cities like Sydney, the cost of congestion to the economy is huge. And so in addition to better health and lifestyle outcomes, investment in walking also makes very good economic and social sense. I'm very pleased to say that in December last year, we released the New South Wales Government's plan for walking called Sydney's Walking Future. And again, this was the first time we've done that as a state across every part of the state. And it was very good to make sure that we had done this with the long-term transport vision in mind. And it illustrates our commitment to delivering transport solutions that benefit pedestrians, but most importantly recognises walking again as a key mode of transport and a great enabler to other modes. Often when we ask people to catch a mode of transport, walking is involved in that process. So we're focusing our investment where it will make the most difference by completing missing links in walking networks and making sure people are connected to all major parts of the local centres and public transport hubs. And to give you some examples of the projects we're doing to encourage pedestrian access or walking, one example is Wynyard Walk. You may know that Wynyard train station is one of our largest stations in the CBD, and we're also seeing enormous growth and development at Barangaroo just across from here. The Wynyard Walk, which is a project we're building, will ensure that every day 20,000 workers and up to 33,000 visitors will be able to access Barangaroo by pedestrian walkway from Wynyard Station in 6 minutes. So that is a dedicated project to improve pedestrian access linking to key hubs in our city. But we also know that in addition to building projects and encouraging active transport, we also need to support initiatives which encourage change amongst people. So we are promoting the health and environmental benefits of walking, making walking safer, working with councils in terms of infrastructure, providing better information for our customers through our online trip planning facilities, and also improve wayfinding around transport interchanges. And we're treating walking as an essential mode of transport, which is part of most trips. We're also working closely with other New South Wales government agency partners to support walking. For example, we're working closely with the Department of Planning and Environment to ensure pedestrians' needs are considered in land use planning and major developments. Barangaroo is an example. We're also working with the Ministry of Health and the Department of Education and Communities to promote walking for regular short trips. And we're also working closely with local governments not only to help deliver our pedestrian infrastructure across the state, but also to develop the resources to support walking. Again, the government has made direct funding commitments to walking, which I'm very pleased we've done so. And I also know how important it is for us to work closely with the City of Sydney and other local government agencies to make sure we have an integrated active transport strategy. As you may know, we also have great plans for light rail in the City of Sydney and also down to the southeast of the city. And this, of course, will also encourage greater pedestrian thoroughfare. So part of George Street will become a pedestrian thoroughfare for the first time. That is not only the busiest street in the City of Sydney, but the busiest street in Australia. And we're looking forward to having that increased walkability through the CBD. But across the transport network, we're committed to improving access to our public transport interchanges. We're investing a significant amount of money to make sure that more railway stations have what we call easy access, that we're improving accessibility around our major transport hubs to make sure that people are walking, whether part of their journey or all of their journey, they're able to access their transport hubs in a much more accessible way. I also wanted to highlight a very interesting project we did in a city called Gosford. For those of you who are out of town, about an hour and a half north of here, was Australia's first natural glow-in-the-dark footpath, which we launched at Narara Creek in Gosford. And this initiative will encourage pedestrians to take safe routes across the rail corridor. The footpath was designed in Australia made of natural mineral composite, and the minerals absorb the ultraviolet light from sunlight, and the path glows softly during the evening, so it's a safe way for people to be encouraged to walk. It also improves connectivity to the surrounding footpath network that services local bus stops and nearby hubs. And again, that's an example of trying to encourage people to walk and acknowledge that they want to have a safe path to do that. Again, can I thank the organisers of Walk 21 for having me here today. It's a wonderful pleasure to be here as part of the opening. I hope many of you who've travelled long distances to be here will enjoy the dialogue, and we certainly will as leaders in the community who really want to improve walkability and all the benefits that come from that. Again, want to acknowledge all the representatives here from local government, and also want to acknowledge that I'll be looking forward to, as a Minister for Transport in New South Wales, to listen to the ideas that are discussed, to listen to the challenges and opportunities that we bring together in this conference, and also, again, hope that you enjoy your stay in Sydney by taking advantage of the many beautiful walks we have in and around the harbour. So on behalf of the New South Wales Government, on behalf of the Premier, Mike Baird, and all of my parliamentary colleagues, I wish everybody a very successful and enjoyable conference, and I look forward again to hearing many of the suggestions and ideas that are discussed in the ensuing period. Thank you very much.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.